I came to Hampshire College in 1977 as a transfer student, and I came from a kind of a conservative background and a conservative college, and when I got to Hampshire, there was so much freedom here, socially and academically, that it just gave me the ability and the freedom and the opportunity to fail miserably. Spectacularly, actually. Just to, not to go into the gory details, but my Division 3, all right. My Division 3 originally had been a critique of monogamy as an institution. And I got a little too deep into the primary field research, and I crashed and burned, all right? But there were people here who were watching out for me, and people who got me to some help. And I reluctantly, slowly, I took help. And began the inner work that has allowed the outer work that I do to actually happen. I realized that if I was going to save the world, I had to start with myself. And part of that was figuring out how to feed myself, literally. How do I feed myself? What am I going to feed? How am I going to do that? And so that kind of began this sort of practice and long-term understanding of this practice of leading from the kitchen. So the Division 3 I ended up doing had a kind of unwieldy title, but part of it was On the Road to a Revolutionary Way of Caring. And so this is the report from that road. When Matt told me that the topic was misadventures, it made me think of that Helen Keller quote, "Life is a big daring adventure or nothing." And really, what is a misadventure except that point where you know for sure that you're on a big adventure because you are in uncharted territory. This, of course, is the iconic photo of Helen Keller getting her first electric guitar from Annie Sullivan. So I'm here because, with my partner, June Millington, we started a nonprofit for women in music called the Institute for the Musical Arts. And it's best known for, I think it's best known for its spawning the rock and roll summer programs for girls and young women that we like to call Miss Millington School for Young Ladies. This is our official logo. I modeled it after Amherst College's logo. So, yeah. This is Miss Millington in her younger days, playing at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Hollywood with her band Fanny, which she and her sister started. It was the first all-female band, one of the first all-female bands to get a major record deal and tour internationally and get some recognition. And this is Miss Millington last summer, showing the girls the tools of the trade. So, June, is that an awesome picture or what? So, June and I actually met. Hampshire College plays a lot into my story. June and I actually met here, and when I say here, I mean in this building, Franklin Patterson Hall. Upon graduation, I had been hired to run the Women's Resource Center, and we had hired June to do a workshop. And the moment we saw each other is still pretty much emblazoned in both of our minds. So I hired her a couple of times more, and then we got together in 1984. We just had our 29th anniversary. So, thank you. So June and I, the two of us joined together. We didn't have much resources, but what we did have was we had our family, our friends, our network of colleagues, specific skill sets that the two of us had, and then just this passion. And the root of the passion really was to be in the world as whole human beings. Oh, and then we also had this old rusty van, the obligatory rusty old van that we bought in Amherst, and we drove out to California where all dreams are made. So when we started out, we basically started out just asking the question, what if? And then laying out the possibilities for women in music. Like, what if there were an equal number of all-girl bands as all-boy bands? What if it wasn't unusual to see a woman running sound, live sound at a concert? What if there were more female studio engineers or more producers or record label owners? What if there were more symphony conductors who were women? Those types of questions. And then we set out to create the conditions to answer those questions. And we did it a lot by just doing the next manageable thing that seemed right. So from about 1986 until 91, we just laid the groundwork. We traveled back and forth across the country. June was doing gigs, and we would talk about this institute we had. We got some support from the Women's Foundation in San Francisco and the Women's Building. I mean, organizations like that are critical to supporting, young people with ideas, which we were at that time. We wrote grants, we got our board together, we got our nonprofit status, all that kind of stuff. And when push came to shove and money got tight, I made extra money doing hand-painted T-shirts and got on landscape crews. And in 1991, right at the time we got a $5,000 grant, we also heard about this old creamery, a space that had opened up in an old creamery in Bodega, California that had been converted by artists. And we took a pretty good-sized financial leap of faith and moved in there. The rent was $1,000 a month, and I know I had never written a check for more than $400 or $500, and we had the $5,000 grant, so that was it. But what that did was it provided us with a container finally. So we had a space where our ideas now, where it's not just Ann and June's big idea anymore, it's a space that we can go to. And out of there, our programs developed. So, concerts and workshops, we had a recording studio, we did all kinds of things, programming to support women musicians. Now, in all of that time, as we were throwing around all the ideas about what the Institute would be, from the programming to the structural ideas, like that it would always have 50% women of color on the board, and that men would always be welcome, but women would have the leadership positions, things like that. We never once talked about the kitchen. Never once. We didn't really think about it. But as we progressed, I realized that everything was coming out of that kitchen. And the way that I realized it was I was asked one time to write an article about how women's relationships informed IMA, the Institute. And I could barely even wrap my mind around it because I thought, it just felt like someone asking, how does breathing inform life or something. I really couldn't grasp it. And I sat down at the table in my desk and just wrote about what was happening in the building that moment. And I realized the kitchen was never empty. It was never empty. We had the studio, the control room for the studio was right next to the kitchen. So there's a lot of hanging. Anybody that's been in the studio knows there's lots of big hangs that happen. So, occasionally a pan would get on the track or something like that. But, other than that, it was great. Everybody loved it. Hang out, eat good food, make great music. We were making a lot of money, but we were making a lot of music, and everything was happening in that kitchen. And I think that it happened, and I know that it happened because it was women. And guys, right? If you'd have taken over this place and there's this great big room and you're putting a recording studio in, it'd have been filled with gear. It'd been filled with gear, and then you'd make do with like a hot pot and a microwave, and there'd be like a box of pizza, like pizza boxes, a tower of them. So that desire to nourish, and we're operating out of our desire to nourish ourselves and to each other, eventually led us into working with girls. A mom asked us if her daughter could come to our programs, even though they were for adults one summer. And we said, sure. So this 15-year-old girl shows up, and this sort of sullen, over-sexualized, checked-out kid comes in, and we watched her literally transform. She was able to connect to her own inner truth, to her own creativity, and then she had this amazing vehicle, music, to put it out there with. And she looked like a different kid. She looked like a different kid when she left. And June and I knew right then music is big medicine for kids. And we wanted to do programming for girls. And we thought we would do it the next summer. Interestingly enough, we lost our lease. And the next summer, we were looking for a place in California during the dot-com explosion. And coincidentally, it was also Hampshire College's 30th anniversary, and we were headed out here. So we came here for the anniversary, hanging out with some friends who were living here, bemoaning what was going on in California, and a friend said, you should look here. And we thought, well, that's a cute idea, but no. We built our whole business out in California, but she was persistent. And she came the next day with a real estate magazine, and this place was on the front. And if anybody has been there, this is the magical queendom in Goshen. This is where IMA is. And to make a long story short, every single door that could closed in California, and every one that could open here opened, and we just walked through. So we started our programming again. We were going to wait a little bit to do the programming for girls because we wanted to get situated in the community, have people know us, get the barn together, which at the time was just an old barn. And but a mom came to us and said, "My daughter's ready, and I'll help you fill those spots. Please do it next summer." So we did. We just started out, and we did the programming. In 2002 was our pilot program. We had 5 days, and we had 12 girls. So our programs have developed, again, the way that IMA has developed, which is basically out of our relationships, dealing with the needs as they arise, and using the resources at hand. So the first thing that we were, starting to work with girls, some of the stuff that especially teenage girls, the beginning obstacles where the girls were already starting to shut down. Already, like once you get into high school, you pretty much get the message. If you're a girl, right, don't take up too much space. Be thin, be passive, be quiet. So already starting to hide within themselves. So we had to begin to address that immediately. And one of the things we did was start working with preteens who have their confidence intact unless there's been some kind of trauma, and giving them this tool, which is music, which is great social capital, to go into high school with this sort of confidence. And we also just started doing a coming of age program where we're combining herbalism and rock and roll. And a lot of that stuff takes place in the kitchen. It's kind of like a rock and roll medicine Girl Scouts thing happening. So it's very exciting. So in working with the teens, one of the things that we do is I have to set the stage quickly to let them know that they have the permission here to be who they are and take up as much space as they want. I mean, when we started out, we couldn't even get them to admit that they were writing music. And these are girls going to a music program. And we got a grant from the ASCAP Foundation, and we used that to give scholarships for $150 to every girl who says, "Yes, I'm writing music." And if they won't say it, their parents will say, "Yes, you are writing music. I believe I've seen something." And really, we're not judging, but what we want them to do is to say, "This is mine. Yes, I do this," and claim their own voice and put it out there. So that's the first step. So in getting to get girls to take up space, it looks like we're doing a pretty good job. This is a cartoon that was left behind by one of the girls. And it's a joke, obviously, but if you look at it really closely, you can, like the before thing, she has 2 fingers. She's not happy or sad. She has no expression on her face whatsoever, really. And of course, she's small and she's in the back. And after the program, she's forward, she's clothed, she's got 5 fingers. She's taking up space, okay? So we work with small groups. We work in a short period of time to do a lot so essentially that they can gain the kind of bonding that is around an intensely creative experience. So we give them a short amount of time. It's 10 days, and as people have wanted to extend it, and I'm like, no, because in 10 days, they have enough time to sort of pick up some musical skills, get on the same page musically, collaborate on writing songs, put on a show, but they don't have time to get into their drama. And that's, you know what I mean? There's a lot of time lost in that territory. I mean, there's other places to do that, but here they get to bond then. What they're bonding on is an intensely creative experience that has at the end of it this transformational concert, which is always amazing. Anybody that's been there knows it's amazing. So we've been doing this for 10 years. We just and we celebrated our 10th anniversary of our summer programs last summer and the 25th anniversary of the Institute. We had a music festival called Lady in the Amp Fest. That's designed by one of the girls. They named it. And in that festival, alumni and student played. It was a whole day festival. It went from 9-year-olds to over 25-year-olds who were playing, and then the faculty who played did covers of the songs that they loved that the girls had written. So the girls got to hear like these kick-ass musicians playing their stuff. So that was very cool too. But it was amazing on so many levels. But when I was standing in the back of the audience, and this just kick-ass band, Who'da Funkit, all girls were on the stage. Yeah, right. Who'da Funkit, they were on the stage. And I was watching, and there were all these little boys and girls up in front of the stage, and they're watching too. And I thought, you know what? They don't know that this is unusual. They have no idea that this is unusual. So, those what-if questions, I think we're on our way to answering them. In the summers, this last summer we had 5 programs. We had 2 preteen programs, which had waiting lists. We had 2 teen programs, and then we have the studio recording and producing an engineering program. That program has been slower to fill because there aren't girls or young women who are ready. We do take college students, I'll just tell you. So this network of musicians is building, and they're supporting each other. The reason I stuck this slide in is this is in our recording studio. One of the bands that came out was doing some recording, and there's girls in there who are in 2 other bands as well, and they're just there to support them and to hang out. So what do? The very first night, what do we teach the girls, the 9-year-olds, the 12-year-olds? We teach them how to run the board. We teach them how to power up, plug in, and then put their voice out into the world together as a group. And where will you find me, the executive director? In the kitchen. Because what better place for policies to be made, what better place to create institutions from, what better place to say, yes, this is where the power lies, in the place of nurturing. And if we keep doing that, if we keep building institutions that are based on women's relationships, based on on everybody who wants to come from a place of nurturing, we might just create a world where everybody who comes to the table is fed.